Your soulmate just wrote you a secret love letter. It disappears in 5 minutes. Don't skip. Listen carefully. The evening arrived with a peaceful calm that seemed to slow the entire world. The golden sun slipped gently behind distant hills, painting the sky with shades of amber, pink, and soft violet. A gentle breeze drifted through the open window, carrying the comforting fragrance of blooming jasmine and fresh rain that had fallen earlier that afternoon. Birds sang their final songs before returning to their nests. The neighborhood bakery switched off its lights after another busy day, leaving behind the lingering aroma of warm bread. Children laughed as they raced home before darkness settled over the quiet streets. Neighbors waved goodnight from their front porches. Everything looked wonderfully ordinary. Yet somewhere, in a softly lit room filled with quiet memories, someone sat at a small wooden desk, staring at a blank sheet of paper. Not because they were searching for perfect words, but because they had finally realized that some feelings should never remain unspoken. Because your heart needs this right now, because the most meaningful conversations often begin with one honest sentence. The room was simple. A small lamp cast a warm glow across the desk. A steaming cup of tea rested beside an old leather notebook whose worn cover reflected years of dreams, prayers, reflections, and gratitude. The window remained slightly open, allowing the cool evening breeze to gently move the curtains. For several quiet minutes, they simply listened. The ticking of the old clock. The whisper of the wind. The peaceful sounds of the evening settling in. Then they whispered softly to themselves. If I don't write these words today, I may never write them at all. Because your heart needs this right now, because tomorrow is never guaranteed, but kindness can always begin today. They opened the notebook. Inside were pages filled with memories. Some joyful. Some difficult. Some ordinary. Each page represented another season of growth. One handwritten sentence caught their attention. Never leave gratitude waiting for the perfect moment. They smiled gently. Perhaps that sentence had been waiting years to be read again. Because your heart needs this right now, because wisdom often arrives when we are finally ready to hear it. Slowly, they reached for the blank sheet of paper. The pen rested gently in their hand. At first, nothing happened. The page remained empty. Not because they had nothing to say. Because their heart carried far more than words could easily express. Then, almost without thinking, they began writing. This letter may never be read. They paused. Then continued. But I don't want another day to pass without saying thank you. Another line appeared. Thank you for every moment of kindness you showed without expecting recognition. Thank you for every conversation that made an ordinary day feel brighter. Thank you for reminding me that patience, compassion, and understanding still exist in the world. Reading those words brought a quiet smile. Because your heart needs this right now, because gratitude becomes even more meaningful when it is expressed sincerely. The letter continued growing. Not with dramatic declarations. Not with impossible promises. Instead, it became a collection of honest memories. A rainy afternoon spent laughing over warm coffee. A peaceful walk beneath towering trees. A conversation that offered hope during a difficult season. Simple moments. Ordinary moments. Yet somehow, those ordinary moments had become unforgettable. Because your heart needs this right now, because the greatest memories are often created in life's simplest moments. Later that evening, they stepped outside for a quiet walk. The familiar neighborhood park welcomed them with peaceful silence. Towering oak trees stretched toward a sky now filled with countless stars. The calm lake reflected the moonlight like polished silver. Families packed away picnic blankets. Children waved goodbye to new friends before heading home. Everything invited reflection. Finding the familiar wooden bench overlooking the water, they quietly sat. The folded letter rested safely inside their notebook. They weren't wondering whether it would ever be delivered. They were simply grateful it had finally been written. Because your heart needs this right now, because honesty often brings peace long before it changes anything else. Nearby, an elderly grandfather carefully folded paper cranes with his young granddaughter. The little girl asked, "Why do we keep making them?" The grandfather smiled warmly. "Because everyone carries a little hope." She held one carefully. "But they're only paper." He nodded. "So are letters. But sometimes they carry enough love to stay in someone's heart forever." Those simple words settled gently inside. Perhaps words are never just words. Perhaps they become bridges connecting hearts. Because your heart needs this right now, because thoughtful words often become lifelong memories. The evening slowly became night. Walking beside the peaceful lake, they noticed an elderly artist quietly sketching the reflection of the moon upon the water. "It looks beautiful," they said. The artist smiled. "I almost drew the stars instead." "What changed?" "I realized the moon was already enough." Those words lingered. How often do people search for extraordinary ways to express love while overlooking the quiet beauty of simple honesty? Because your heart needs this right now, because sincerity shines brighter than perfection. Later they wandered through the community flower garden. Rows of roses, lilies, lavender, daisies, and moonflowers glowed softly beneath the evening sky. An elderly gardener carefully watered each flower before gently tying a young vine to a wooden trellis. Curious, they asked, "Why help it if it's already growing?" The gardener smiled kindly. "Growing things still need support." He paused before quietly adding, "So do hearts." A thoughtful letter. A kind word. A patient listener. A reminder that someone matters. Those things help people keep growing. Those words quietly echoed inside. Because your heart needs this right now, because encouragement is one of the greatest gifts we can give. Returning home beneath a sky filled with countless stars, they unfolded the letter one final time. The ink had already dried. Every sentence reflected honesty. Every paragraph reflected gratitude. Then, at the bottom of the page, they added one final line. "If these words disappear tomorrow, I hope the kindness behind them never does." They folded the letter carefully and placed it inside the notebook. For the first time in many seasons, their heart felt lighter. Not because every question had been answered, but because silence no longer carried the burden. Because your heart needs this right now, because expressing gratitude often heals the one who speaks it as much as the one who receives it. As the room grew quiet and the stars continued shining outside, they reflected on the title of this story. Your soulmate just wrote you a secret love letter. It disappears in 5 minutes. A gentle smile crossed their face. They understood its deeper meaning. The disappearing letter was never meant to suggest that a real soulmate had written a magical message or that such an event was happening in anyone's life. Instead, it symbolized how quickly opportunities to express appreciation can pass if we keep waiting for the perfect moment. The real message was simple. Don't let meaningful words remain unwritten. Tell people they matter. Express gratitude freely. Choose kindness while there is still time. Because your heart needs this right now, because the most meaningful letters are not remembered for their mystery, they are remembered for their honesty. They gently closed the notebook. Outside, the night sky shimmered with countless stars. Tomorrow remained unwritten. New conversations would begin. New opportunities for kindness would appear. And for the first time in many seasons, they no longer feared putting their heart into words. Because they had discovered that the greatest love letters are not measured by beautiful poetry. They are measured by sincerity, gratitude, compassion, and the courage to finally say what truly matters. And listen to this. The next morning arrived wrapped in a peaceful silence. Golden sunlight slipped gently through the curtains, filling the room with warm shades of amber and honey. A cool breeze drifted through the open window, carrying the fragrance of blooming roses and the freshness of the earth after an early morning rain. Outside, birds welcomed another beautiful day with cheerful songs. The familiar neighborhood bakery unlocked its doors before sunrise, filling the streets with the comforting aroma of warm bread. Children laughed as they hurried toward school. Neighbors smiled while watering colorful gardens and greeting one another. Everything appeared exactly as it always had. Yet inside one heart, everything felt wonderfully different. The letter resting safely inside the leather notebook no longer represented uncertainty. It represented courage. Because your heart needs this right now, because the hardest part is often finding the courage to speak honestly. A warm cup of tea rested beside the notebook. Steam curled gently into the cool morning air. Slowly, they opened the worn leather cover once again. The carefully folded letter waited quietly between the pages. They unfolded it with trembling hands. Every sentence still carried the same warmth. Thank you for every ordinary moment that quietly became extraordinary. Thank you for every patient conversation. Thank you for reminding me that kindness changes lives. Reading those words brought another peaceful smile. Not because they were perfect, but because they were true. Because your heart needs this right now, because sincerity is far more meaningful than perfection. Turning to a fresh page in the notebook, they rested the pen gently upon the paper. For several quiet moments, nothing happened. Only birds singing outside. The gentle breeze moving the curtains. The soft ticking of the old clock. Then another sentence slowly appeared. There is something hidden between every line of this letter. They paused before continuing. It isn't mystery. It isn't destiny. It's gratitude. Another sentence followed. Sometimes love is simply remembering to thank someone before life carries both people in different directions. Reading those words filled the room with quiet peace. Because your heart needs this right now, because appreciation deserves to be spoken while there is still time. Later that morning they returned to the familiar neighborhood park. Towering oak trees stretched confidently toward the brilliant blue sky. Gentle breezes danced through their branches. The peaceful lake reflected drifting white clouds like polished glass. Families gathered beneath shady trees. Children chased butterflies through blooming flower gardens. Everything invited stillness. Finding the familiar wooden bench overlooking the water, they quietly sat. This time they weren't wondering whether the letter would ever be read. They simply appreciated that it existed. Because your heart needs this right now, because expressing truth brings peace regardless of the outcome. Nearby, an elderly grandfather patiently helped his grandson build a small wooden kite. The little boy frowned as one piece refused to fit. "I think I ruined it." The grandfather smiled warmly. "No. It simply needs another careful look." Together they adjusted the wooden frame. Moments later the colorful kite was complete. The little boy laughed with delight. Watching them stirred something deep inside. Perhaps relationships resemble that kite. Sometimes they don't need dramatic repairs. Sometimes they simply need patience. Because your heart needs this right now, because understanding grows when people choose patience over assumptions. The morning slowly became afternoon. Walking beside the peaceful lake, they noticed an elderly woman quietly reading beneath a flowering tree. After exchanging warm smiles, she gently closed her book. "You know," she said kindly, "the most beautiful letters don't ask for anything. They simply give." Those words lingered. How many messages are written hoping to change another person? How many become more meaningful when they simply express appreciation? Because your heart needs this right now, because generosity begins with expecting nothing in return. Later they wandered into the community flower garden. Rows of roses, lilies, lavender, daisies, and sunflowers stretched beneath the warm afternoon sunshine. An elderly gardener carefully watered every flower before removing a few tiny weeds growing near the roots. Curious, they asked, "Why remove them while they're still so small?" The gardener smiled kindly. "Because little things grow. So do kind words. So do misunderstandings. So does hope." He gently watered another flower before adding, "The things we nurture become stronger." Those simple words quietly echoed inside. Because your heart needs this right now, because healthy relationships flourish through steady care. The afternoon breeze carried soft violin music across the park. Only a handful of visitors paused to listen. Still, every melody filled the quiet afternoon with remarkable beauty. Watching the musician reminded them that life's greatest strengths rarely seek attention. Compassion grows quietly. Patience grows quietly. Forgiveness grows quietly. Hope grows quietly. Gratitude grows quietly. Yet together, they quietly transform lives. Because your heart needs this right now, because quiet goodness often creates the deepest change. As the afternoon slowly faded into evening, they finally made a decision. The letter would no longer remain hidden inside the notebook forever. Whether it was shared today or another day, its purpose was never to impress. Its purpose was to honor someone who had made life brighter. Because your heart needs this right now, because heartfelt words become meaningful when they are shared with sincerity. Standing beside the peaceful lake as the setting sun reflected brilliant shades of gold, pink, and violet across the calm water, they thought once more about the title of this story. Your soulmate just wrote you a secret love letter. It disappears in 5 minutes. A gentle smile crossed their face. They finally understood. The disappearing letter was never meant to suggest that a real soulmate had written a magical message or that such an event was happening in anyone's life. Instead, it symbolized how quickly opportunities can pass when we keep postponing honest conversations. A thank you delayed. An apology postponed. A compliment never spoken. Those moments can disappear if we wait too long. The true invitation is simple. Express appreciation today. Choose honesty today. Offer kindness today. Because your heart needs this right now, because meaningful words are most powerful when they are shared before the opportunity fades. That evening they returned home beneath a sky filled with countless stars. The notebook rested quietly upon the desk. Opening it one final time before bed, they slowly wrote, "Tomorrow I will continue choosing honesty over hesitation. Tomorrow I will express gratitude without waiting for perfect timing. Tomorrow I will remind people that they matter. Tomorrow I will protect meaningful relationships with kindness, patience, compassion, and hope." Then they paused before writing one final reflection. "Today I learned that the greatest love letters are not remembered because they contain perfect words. They are remembered because they are written with a sincere heart. Gratitude, encouragement, forgiveness, and truth have a way of touching lives long after the paper has faded. Those simple messages become lasting reminders that kindness is never wasted." They gently closed the notebook. Outside, countless stars shimmered across the peaceful night sky. Tomorrow remained unwritten. New conversations would begin. New opportunities for kindness would quietly appear. And for the first time in many seasons, they no longer feared sharing what was in their heart. Because they had discovered that the most meaningful letters are never magical. They are simply honest. And listen to this. Several peaceful days had passed since the letter was carefully folded and placed inside the familiar leather notebook. The ink had dried. The pages no longer trembled beneath uncertain hands. Yet every word still carried the same quiet sincerity. Outside, another beautiful morning slowly awakened. Golden sunlight slipped across the windowsill, painting the room with warm shades of amber and gold. A cool breeze drifted through the open window, carrying the fragrance of blooming jasmine and freshly cut grass. Birds greeted the sunrise with cheerful songs. The neighborhood bakery filled the streets with the comforting aroma of warm bread. Children laughed on their way to school. Neighbors smiled while watering flowers and waving to one another. Everything appeared wonderfully ordinary. Yet inside one heart, today felt different. Not because they expected a miracle, but because they had finally decided the letter deserved to be shared instead of hidden. Because your heart needs this right now, because honest words become meaningful only when we have the courage to let them be heard. A warm cup of tea rested beside the notebook. Steam curled gently into the morning air. For a long moment, they simply looked at the folded letter. It wasn't decorated with elegant handwriting. It wasn't sealed with expensive wax. It wasn't written to impress anyone. It simply contained the truth. And sometimes, truth is the most beautiful gift a person can offer. Because your heart needs this right now, because sincerity leaves a deeper impression than perfection ever could. Slowly, they unfolded the letter once more. Their eyes rested on the opening lines. Thank you for bringing kindness into ordinary days. Thank you for every conversation that reminded me to hope. Thank you for showing patience when life felt uncertain. Reading those words again filled the room with quiet gratitude. There were no dramatic promises. No impossible expectations. Only appreciation. Only honesty. Only kindness. Because your heart needs this right now, because gratitude grows stronger each time it is remembered. Later that morning they walked toward the familiar neighborhood park. Towering oak trees stretched confidently toward the brilliant blue sky. Gentle breezes moved softly through the branches. The peaceful lake reflected drifting clouds like polished glass. Families gathered beneath shady trees. Children chased butterflies through colorful flower gardens. Everything invited stillness. Finding the familiar wooden bench overlooking the water, they quietly sat. The letter rested safely inside the notebook beside them. For the first time, they no longer wondered whether the words were good enough. They simply hoped they were honest enough. Because your heart needs this right now, because genuine hearts seek truth rather than perfection. Nearby, an elderly grandfather patiently taught his granddaughter how to fly a small paper kite. The first attempt failed. The second drifted only a few feet. The little girl sighed. Maybe I can't do it. Her grandfather smiled warmly. You don't stop because the first try is difficult. You learn. Together they tried again. This time the kite caught the breeze and soared high above the trees. The little girl laughed with delight. Watching them stirred something gentle inside. Perhaps courage works the same way. The first step often feels uncertain. The second feels easier. Eventually, the heart learns to trust the wind. Because your heart needs this right now, because courage grows every time we choose honesty over fear. The morning slowly became afternoon. Walking beside the peaceful lake, they noticed an elderly woman quietly sketching the reflections dancing across the water. She smiled kindly. "What are you drawing?" they asked. She looked toward the lake before answering. "Not the water. The light upon it." Those words lingered. Life often gives people difficult seasons. Yet kindness allows us to remember the light that remained even during uncertain moments. Because your heart needs this right now, because hope becomes easier to see when gratitude guides our attention. Finally, the moment arrived. The letter was gently placed into waiting hands. No grand speeches followed. No dramatic music. No impossible promises. Only quiet anticipation. The letter was unfolded carefully. Every sentence was read slowly. Every memory revisited with gentle appreciation. The room remained silent. Not because the words were difficult, but because they were meaningful. When the final page was turned, a peaceful smile appeared. One quiet sentence broke the silence. "I didn't know you remembered all of this." The reply came softly. "I remembered every kindness. Because your heart needs this right now, because people rarely forget how they were treated with genuine care." The conversation that followed wasn't perfect. There were pauses. Moments of reflection. Gentle laughter. A few quiet tears. Not tears of regret, but tears of gratitude. One person admitted, "I always thought those moments were too ordinary to matter." The other smiled warmly. "They became extraordinary because we shared them." Those words settled deeply into both hearts. Because your heart needs this right now, because meaningful relationships are often built from ordinary moments shared with extraordinary care. Later they wandered together through the community flower garden. Rows of roses, lilies, daisies, lavender, and sunflowers bloomed beneath the warm afternoon sunshine. An elderly gardener carefully tied a young vine to a wooden trellis. Curious, they asked, "Why support something that's already growing?" The gardener smiled kindly. "Because growing things still need encouragement." He paused before adding, "So do people." A thoughtful letter. A patient conversation. A sincere apology. A grateful heart. Those simple gifts help relationships continue growing. Those words quietly echoed inside. Because your heart needs this right now, because encouragement helps love mature into lasting trust. As the afternoon breeze carried soft piano music across the park, only a handful of visitors paused to listen. Still, every melody filled the quiet afternoon with remarkable beauty. Watching the musician reminded them that life's greatest gifts rarely demand attention. Compassion grows quietly. Patience grows quietly. Forgiveness grows quietly. Hope grows quietly. Gratitude grows quietly. Yet together, they quietly transform lives. Because your heart needs this right now, because quiet goodness often leaves the deepest legacy. As evening slowly approached, golden sunlight reflected across the peaceful lake. Families gathered picnic blankets. Children waved goodbye to new friends. Birds returned peacefully to their nests. Everything gradually became still. Standing beside the calm water, they reflected once more on the title of this story. Your soulmate just wrote you a secret love letter. It disappears in 5 minutes. A gentle smile crossed their face. They finally understood. The disappearing letter was never meant to suggest that a real soulmate had written a magical message or that such an event was happening in anyone's life. Instead, it symbolized how quickly opportunities to express gratitude can disappear when people keep postponing honest conversations. A heartfelt thank you. A sincere apology. A reminder that someone matters. Those moments become most meaningful when shared today instead of someday. Because your heart needs this right now, because love is strengthened through honest words spoken while the opportunity still exists. That evening they returned home beneath a sky filled with countless stars. The notebook rested quietly upon the desk. Opening it one final time before bed, they slowly wrote. Today I discovered that the greatest love letter was never about romance alone. It was about gratitude. It was about courage. It was about finally giving kindness a voice. Then they added one final reflection. The most meaningful messages are not remembered because they were mysterious or magical. They are remembered because they were honest. A sincere heart, expressed with kindness and humility, can become a gift that lasts far longer than the paper on which it was written. They gently closed the notebook. Outside, countless stars shimmered across the peaceful night sky. Tomorrow remained unwritten. New conversations would begin. New opportunities to express gratitude would quietly appear. And for the first time in many seasons, they no longer feared letting their heart be seen. Because they had discovered that the greatest love letters never disappear. Their words live on through kindness, compassion, honesty, and the memories they create. And listen to this. The final morning arrived wrapped in a peaceful silence unlike any morning before. Golden sunlight slowly poured through the curtains, filling every corner of the room with warm shades of amber and soft gold. A gentle breeze drifted through the open window, carrying the fragrance of blooming jasmine and the fresh scent of rain that had fallen during the night. Outside, birds welcomed the sunrise with cheerful songs. The neighborhood bakery unlocked its doors before dawn, filling the nearby streets with the comforting aroma of warm bread. Children laughed as they walked toward school. Neighbors smiled while watering colorful flowers and greeting one another. Everything appeared wonderfully ordinary. Yet inside one heart, everything had quietly changed. Not because every question had been answered. Not because every dream had come true. But because nothing important remained unsaid. Because your heart needs this right now, because peace often begins when honesty replaces hesitation. That morning there was no rush. No anxious waiting. No wondering if the letter had been perfect. Only gratitude. A warm cup of tea rested beside the familiar leather notebook. Steam curled gently into the cool morning air. Outside, two robins carefully gathered tiny twigs to strengthen their nest. Again and again they returned. One small twig at a time. Watching them brought a peaceful smile. Strong nests are not built in one morning. Strong relationships are not built in one conversation. They grow through countless ordinary moments of kindness, patience, trust, honesty, and care. Because your heart needs this right now, because lasting relationships are built one thoughtful choice at a time. Slowly they reached for the notebook resting quietly upon the desk. Its worn leather cover reflected years of memories. Inside were dreams written during hopeful seasons. Questions recorded during lonely nights. Prayers whispered through uncertain moments. Pages filled with gratitude after unexpected blessings. Turning those familiar pages felt like meeting every earlier version of themselves. The version who feared expressing emotions. The version who believed silence protected the heart. The version who waited endlessly for the perfect moment. And finally, the version who understood something beautiful. Perfect words are never required. Only sincere ones. Because your heart needs this right now, because authenticity creates deeper connections than perfection ever could. Only one blank page remained. The final page. They rested the pen gently against the paper. For several peaceful moments they simply listened. The birds. The breeze. The quiet ticking of the old clock. Then they slowly began writing. Today I finally understand. They paused before continuing. The greatest love letter was never about beautiful handwriting. It was never about finding perfect words. It was about having the courage to say thank you while there was still time. Another sentence followed. Kindness should never remain hidden. Gratitude should never remain unspoken. Love grows strongest when honesty becomes its foundation. Reading those words filled their eyes with peaceful tears. Not tears of sadness, but tears of gratitude. Because your heart needs this right now, because sincere words often heal both the writer and the reader. Later that morning they returned one final time to the familiar neighborhood park. The towering oak tree stretched confidently toward the brilliant blue sky. Its branches swayed gently beneath the summer breeze. The peaceful lake reflected drifting white clouds like polished glass. Families gathered beneath shady trees sharing stories. Children laughed while feeding ducks along the shoreline. Everything invited stillness. Finding the familiar wooden bench overlooking the water, they quietly sat. This time they weren't searching for answers. They already carried them inside. Because your heart needs this right now, because true peace comes from living honestly, not from knowing what tomorrow will bring. Nearby, an elderly carpenter carefully restored an old wooden bridge crossing a narrow stream. A curious child watched for several minutes before asking, "Why don't you build a brand new bridge instead?" The carpenter smiled warmly. "Because this bridge has carried many people safely. It deserves care." He gently sanded another weathered board before quietly adding, "The strongest things are often those that have been repaired with patience." Those simple words settled deeply into their heart. Relationships can be like that bridge. Life leaves scratches. Misunderstandings leave cracks. Time leaves scars. Yet honesty, compassion, patience, forgiveness, and consistent care can strengthen what once seemed fragile. Because your heart needs this right now, because healing often creates stronger foundations than perfection ever could. The afternoon slowly unfolded. Golden sunlight shimmered across the peaceful lake. Nearby, a father patiently helped his young daughter learn to ride her bicycle. She wobbled. She lost her balance. She stood up again. Looking worried, she asked, "So, I failed?" Her father smiled gently. "No. You learned." Watching them reminded everyone nearby that growth rarely arrives without a few difficult moments. Relationships grow the same way. Not because every day is easy, but because people keep choosing understanding instead of giving up. Because your heart needs this right now, because perseverance helps trust grow stronger. Later they wandered through the community flower garden. Rows of roses, lilies, lavender, daisies, and sunflowers bloomed beneath the warm afternoon sunshine. An elderly gardener carefully watered every flower before gently trimming away faded leaves. Curious, they asked, "What makes this garden so beautiful?" The gardener smiled kindly. "It isn't one extraordinary flower. It's the care given every single day." He looked across the colorful garden before quietly adding, "Love grows the same way. A thoughtful conversation. A patient heart. A sincere apology. A grateful spirit. Those small acts keep relationships alive." Those words lingered long after they walked away. Because your heart needs this right now, because meaningful relationships flourish through everyday acts of care. As evening slowly approached, one final conversation unfolded. There were no dramatic speeches. No impossible promises. Only quiet sincerity. One person smiled warmly. "Thank you for writing that letter." The other replied softly, "Thank you for reading it." A peaceful silence followed. Not because there was nothing left to say, but because everything important had already been shared. That silence felt like home. Because your heart needs this right now, because genuine understanding often speaks louder than words. The sun slowly disappeared beyond the horizon. The lake reflected brilliant shades of orange, pink, and violet. Families packed picnic blankets. Children waved goodbye to new friends. Birds returned peacefully to their nests. Everything gradually became still. Standing beside the calm water, they reflected one final time on the title of this story. Your soulmate just wrote you a secret love letter. It disappears in 5 minutes. A gentle smile crossed their face. They finally understood. The story had never claimed that a real soulmate had written a magical letter or that such an event was happening in the reader's life. The disappearing letter symbolized something much more human. Opportunities to express appreciation do not last forever. A heartfelt thank you. A sincere apology. A reminder that someone matters. Those chances can quietly disappear if we always wait for later. The real invitation was simple. Speak with honesty. Express gratitude. Choose kindness today. Because your heart needs this right now, because the most meaningful messages are the ones we choose to share before the moment passes. That evening they returned home beneath a sky filled with countless stars. Opening the notebook one final time, they carefully wrote, "If this journey has taught me anything, it is this. Never wait too long to tell someone they are appreciated. Never believe kindness is too small to matter. Never let fear silence a grateful heart. Protect meaningful relationships through honesty, patience, forgiveness, compassion, and hope." They paused before writing one final reflection. Tomorrow remains unwritten, but I no longer fear it. Whether life brings joyful celebrations, quiet mornings, unexpected conversations, or difficult seasons, I choose to meet each day with gratitude, courage, empathy, kindness, and love. Those values may not remove every challenge, but they will help build relationships rooted in trust, understanding, respect, and lasting peace. They gently closed the notebook. Outside, countless stars shimmered across the peaceful night sky. The journey had reached its final page. Tomorrow remained unwritten. New conversations would begin. New opportunities to encourage others would quietly appear. And for the first time in many seasons, they no longer feared putting their heart into words. Because they had discovered the greatest truth of all. The most meaningful love letters never disappear. They continue living through sincere conversations, thoughtful actions, grateful hearts, and everyday acts of kindness. The room became still. The stars filled the night sky. With a peaceful smile, they turned off the light, ready to welcome tomorrow, not with fear, but with wisdom, compassion, gratitude, hope, and love.